It is 4:06 on a Tuesday, a historic Tuesday if you want to start keeping track. It is the Vince Coglianese Show. My name is Mike Opelka, sitting in for my friend Vince Coglianese. We are 55 days away from Donald Trump being sworn in again as President of the United States. And if you put your head out the window and point your nose towards the Capitol, and you breathe in, you can almost smell the return of the Donald Trump Republican leadership MAGA agenda. I'm just saying that. Now, some people have a different thought about that. But I smell freshness. I smell the return of a good, strong, and eventually united America. I know there's a lot of back and forth. Today, we just got good news out of the Middle East. Today, as President Biden has said, good news to report from the Middle East, that there will be a ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. And Joe Biden is doing what most presidents would do, taking credit for it, saying they have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, not Hamas. Let's not forget who started this on October 7th. I mean, it's been going on for years and years and years. But the latest conflict and the heaviest military conflict was triggered by October 7th and the Hamas invasion of Israel. But I was just checking something out, and Nick Sorter posted this on his Twitter X account. It is a screen grab from a Washington Post story. And the headline reads, Washington Post exclusive, Israel prepares Lebanon's ceasefire plan as, quote, gift, close quote, to Trump, officials say. And then the subhead reads, an Israeli government minister discussed the proposal with Trump and Jared Kushner at Mar-a-Lago on Sunday before traveling to the White House for talks. Is there more Trump involvement in this than we know? Maybe we will see. Maybe we will hear more on this. And maybe the hostages will be returned if we get Hamas to come to the table as well. There are Americans currently being held by these terrorists for over a year. Americans. And I'm sure we're not sure if they're all living or dead. There's no proof of life been demanded. And we haven't been privy to those negotiations. So maybe there's been ongoing negotiations. We will find out. If you want to join the conversation today during the show, anytime, 888-630-9625 is the number. I do want to move on to another topic, but before I go, Ivan has been holding in Florida and has something to say about this situation. Ivan, welcome.
Hey, Michael, how you doing? I got a quick rhetorical question and then a couple suggestions real quick. If peace breaks out in Israel and Ukraine, which likely it will under a Trump administration, will Trump win the Nobel Peace Prize? And, of course, I think we know the answer to that because of the politics of it. But Biden may want the credit, but nobody believes Biden is the catalyst for anything, especially peace in the Middle East.
I think that's a very good point. But, you know, what's curious to me, and we were talking about it during the break, if the Washington Post story is legit, then Joe Biden is taking credit for what may have been a Trump and Jared Kushner negotiated ceasefire.
100%.
So once
I got two.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I had two quick suggestions for the president. We want to get our vocabulary back and we want to get our acronyms back. I got for cabinet position or for actually appointment, Federal Ethics and Accountability Reform Czar, which would spell out fear, and of course the czar would be Matt Gaetz. He could go after Adam Schiff for lying, the kangaroo court, and investigate, the document destruction, J6 prosecution, judges that use the law as a weapon. That would be Matt Gaetz, the Federal Ethics and Accountability Reform Czar. And the last one would be DEI. We'd take those initials back, and that would be Department of Election Integrity and that would be Dinesh D'Souza. You know, he would be the perfect guy. They have, you know, the states that, you know, have to keep records for 22 months for federal elections. You know, they could audit the election, or they should audit the elections in Georgia, Maricopa County, Clark County, Philadelphia, all those liberal places. You know, just do an audit of the vote. You know, do a deep analysis. You look at the signatures, the duplicate votes, the irregularities, the drop boxes, the mail-in votes, and try to find out where they stole or try to steal elections. Because you got another election coming up in the midterms, and we need to be prepared for it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry for rambling on, but I appreciate your time, Michael.
Thank you, Ivan. Those are good suggestions. In terms of Matt Gaetz, I'll address that first. Matt Gaetz did post on Twitter X a couple days ago that special counsels don't need to be going through a confirmation process. The special counsels don't require a confirmation process, and he just kind of left it there. Does that mean Matt Gaetz would be interested in being a special counselor and going after some of these things that Ivan just brought up? That's possible. That's very possible. And concerning the idea of Dinesh D'Souza heading up DEI, the Department of Election Integrity, boy, oh boy, Dinesh certainly has done some of the work. If you saw 2,000 Mules, you saw some of the work that's already been done. I think we get election integrity on track when we go back to some of the things that Donald Trump and many others have been saying for a couple of years now, that we go back to election day, not election month, not election fortnight, whatever. Election day, we go back to paper ballots. They're still counting in California. You know they're still counting out in California. It's beyond stupid. And voter ID. If we get voter ID everywhere, especially for federal elections, I think we make gigantic steps towards integrity in all of our elections. But those are my wishes. Paper ballots, election day, and voter ID. And it's simple. France does it. India does it. All these places do it in one stinking day. It's just embarrassing what they're doing out in California. And I will tell you, Pennsylvania was embarrassing too. Let's continue on the discussion with you, the listeners. Mark is in Missouri. Mark, welcome to the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yes, I think it's laughable that Biden is now taking credit for this supposed peace deal. We'll have to see yet if that actually happens. But he funded Iran $35 billion directly and allows them to sell oil, which they've made hundreds of billions. They could then fund Hamas and other groups. President Trump had them bankrupted, which is why they were silent during his term. But it's so pathetic. And, of course, the news media would never report that. But Biden is responsible for the chaos in the Middle East, virtually 100%.
Yeah, he is looking to end his presidency with some wins. And, I think that's human nature, especially after you've lost in such a monstrous fashion. He lost the Senate and he lost, his party lost the White House, and he's majorly to blame for this. And pardon my horrible grammar today. But yeah, Biden bears the brunt of the responsibility here for the Democrats losing on such a massive scale. And so he's looking for whatever wins he can, whether it be trying to say that the American healthcare system is going to pay for Ozempic and Wegovy for everybody, or he's going to try and take credit for what may have been negotiated either by and with Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, or separately by Israel and its friends in the Middle East. So we don't know, but yeah, you're right. But for the funding of Iran, the Middle East would be a much quieter place these days. And Biden certainly has fingerprints all over it. Nicely done, Mark. Well sorted out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We have things we want to get to today. One of the things that has the mainstream media twisting today are the Trump tariffs. And this was announced yesterday. Donald Trump came out to say that he is going to slap Mexico and Canada with a 25% tariff if they can't tighten the borders. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And he added 10% more on China if they don't stop the fentanyl. Now, a lot of people on the left side of the mainstream media are saying he's going to trigger inflation. And I will tell you, we're going to have a discussion about this at 4:35. We're going to get into this and talk about what these tariffs mean and will they trigger inflation. And the one thing that comes to mind, if China and Mexico and Canada all agree, okay, we got to fix this, then the tariffs don't matter because they won't be placed on any of your products. If you stop flooding America with fentanyl, guess what, China? The 10% tariff goes away. If you tighten your borders, Canada, if you tighten your borders, Mexico, if you start turning the caravans around, guess what? The 25% tariff goes away. It's not a problem if you just treat us like we're respected neighbors. But they don't because they don't believe it. I really am interested to see how this shakes out. And I know that tariffs are actually respected by the Biden administration, especially when it comes to China, because they've left them in place. They haven't touched a single one of those tariffs. So if you're going to start barking about that, and I know that CNN and MSNBC have been screaming about it all day long since last night, since the announcement came out on Truth Social. But give me a break. I also want to talk about a couple other things here. And I mentioned Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin is in Italy for a film festival. They invited him to be there, but he mandated that the Turin, Italy Film Festival would not mention the film Rust, which is the film that he pulled the trigger on the firearm that killed the assistant director. Couldn't be brought up. But when you hear what he has to say about America and Americans and how ignorant Americans are, I just wonder if these people understand that their comments are going to travel halfway around the world. I don't think Alec Baldwin fully understands that yet. I also have a couple other kind of strange stories that have been floating around out there. I want to talk about what's happening in terms of our food. Bird flu is back, and so they're starting to kill turkeys by the tens of thousands out west. If you've already got your turkey, and pretty much all the turkeys in the store for Thanksgiving are there, you're not going to see a spike in turkey prices. But there was another FDA notice yesterday about some food that we are not supposed to eat. And I'm looking at the list, and a lot of the stuff on this list is things I would never eat anyway. And I'm not sure any of you would either. Have you had a duck tongue soup in recent days? I'll explain just around the corner. And if you haven't had your afternoon snack, you might want to hold off. Some of these foods that are being recalled, yes, here in America, it's not in some weird country. These are 72,000 tons of food. And it's not because it's past its expiration date. It's because it could have listeria, deadly stuff. Who's eating duck tongue? I just want to know. We'll get in. It's 425, the Vince Coglianese Show. Mike Opelka in for Vince on WMAL. I love me some Larry O'Connor. I love it when Larry gets ranting. It's one of my favorite things. Big fan of Larry. So much to get to. I mentioned this recall. There was a serious notice yesterday from the USDA. They announced that a bunch of ready-to-eat meat and poultry products were being recalled due to possible listeria contamination. And it's no joke. This stuff is deadly. If you get listeria, it's not good. It's not good. And they recalled 72,240 pounds of ready-to-eat meat. And I started thinking, I wonder if any of this meat is something I would be eating. So I looked at the list that they published. As I mentioned before the break, this looks like something I'm not eating. Yeah, Chinese brand spicy duck head, as opposed to the non-spicy duck head. The spicy duck tongues. There are also the seasoned pork tongues. Not eating the seasoned pork tongue. Not eating the seasoned pork snout. The spicy pork ear. The spicy pork feet. The lamb's head soup. but only the frozen variety they're worried about, not the fresh. I know I'm laughing about this. It's bizarre. And, of course, pickled chicken feet, which will not be on my Thanksgiving table. Not even close to being on my Thanksgiving table. But if you have any of these, the FDA has the full list of them. I'm sure you're checking your refrigerators and freezers right now. Duck tongue? That can't be very nutritious or filling. Let's do a quick call. Squeeze a quick call in here before we start talking about tariffs. Donna's in Frederick. Hey, Donna, welcome. What's up?
Hi, Michael. I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving, and same to the audience. I hope we all have a blessed week. I just wanted to say briefly about Joe Biden. In my humble opinion, I think he is the most giant red pill this country ever swallowed. And I thank him for bringing Trump on board because it's what we desperately need. So my take on this thing with Hezbollah, I'm not sure it's going to work, but if it does, it's probably the one thing that Joe Biden could actually take credit for that was good for the country. I'm hoping that it prevails, but, these things, they get sort of dicey, so we don't know. But at least maybe through this week we'll have some peace overseas.
Well, I hope you're right, Don, and thank you for the Thanksgiving wishes. I think we all deserve a happy Thanksgiving. And this may be the start of the season of healing of America. Although I don't know if Joe Biden gets to take credit for putting out a fire that he may have started. We'll deal with that in an ongoing manner. Just around the corner, we'll talk tariffs right here with Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on WMAL. It is 4:34 on this Tuesday, which kind of feels like a Wednesday because, it's the middle of the week for most of us. Tomorrow, Wednesday, will feel like a Friday because Thursday is Friday, being it's Thanksgiving, and Friday is Black Friday. I know I'm confusing everyone. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on WMAL, trying to make sense of the week. So much going on. We talked earlier about the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, which is really Hezbollah, but there is no official ceasefire with Hamas yet. We'll see what happens there. But the other really big story that kind of rocked the news world late yesterday was Donald Trump's proposal, his announcement of his day one intention to drop some pretty serious tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China as it relates to immigration. And to understand it better, to get a better grasp on this, we've invited Mark Krikorian back on the show. It's been a few days, I guess, since you've been here, Mark, the executive director for the Center for Immigration Studies. I'm glad you're here. And, Mark, you come to this with a unique family perspective. Is it wrong for me to say that your family understands the immigration process, seeing how your grandparents came here from another place?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that situation. The problem often is that there's a lot of people who say, well, my grandparents came through Ellis Island, therefore I know everything about immigration. And so, frankly, you don't have to have grandparents who came as immigrants to be, to know about the issue and to have informed opinions on it. So I'd say, look, I'm proud of my grandparents, but that's not. You can come by immigration views honestly, even if your, ancestors came over on the Mayflower, like Barack Obama's did.
Okay. I appreciate that. I was just trying to make a connection because I'm guessing that your grandparents, like my grandparents who actually came from Ireland to this country, that they talked about that, about the conscious decision to come here. And that it was a very prideful thing for them to have made the decision to have come here legally and then to have essentially skin in the game in America, where it seems like the current crisis we're facing is one that doesn't have that kind of approach to it.
Yeah, it's a very different world, honestly, I don't really think the immigrants are all that different from 100 or 200 years ago. We're different. We have a totally different, I mean, the world is smaller, so we need immigration laws in a way that we didn't centuries ago when, frankly, the oceans limited immigration. It was hard to get here, and the country was empty anyway. And so conditions have changed. And there's also been, other changes. We have a welfare state now. That didn't exist when your grandparents and mine came here. We have our institutions like schools that are supposed to assimilate and Americanize people. Have you seen what a school curriculum is like lately? They're not teaching kids to love America and that George Washington's the father of their country. It's terrible. So the point is that I don't really think the immigrants themselves are all that different. Some are good, some are bad. They're kind of like anybody else. What's different is us in good ways and bad ways, but we're different in a way that makes immigration very different from what it was when people's grandparents or whatever great-grandparents came here.
Those are great and very fair points to make. Now, let's get into the tariff discussion. Donald Trump has said that on day one, among some of the instant executive orders he's planning on signing and releasing, deals with trying to shut down the illegal immigration across our northern and southern borders by slapping a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico. And then as sort of an ancillary tariff, he said to China, you're going to get an additional 10% if you guys don't stop the fentanyl shipments. And it's not fentanyl so much as the ingredients to make fentanyl. Let's get into this. Are these going to be inflationary tariffs?
Well, look, I'm not a trade guy, but there's enormous cost to illegal immigration. And if this gets them to get with the program and limit illegal immigration, then, in a sense, it's win-win. In other words, part of this is a negotiating tactic by the president. It's telling them, if you don't limit illegal immigration, you don't control your own borders, you're going to pay a price, because we're paying a price already for out-of-control illegal immigration. And if Mexico and Canada come to the table, and for Canada, it's more a security issue. The numbers are much bigger than they used to be, but they're still small of illegal immigration over the border compared to Mexico. But it's actually arguably more dangerous because there are the folks coming over the border from Canada are more likely to be, from the Middle East or people with specific bad intent. So the point is, it matters. This is a tactic the president used the first time he was in office. It worked. And this is an interesting point, the Biden administration has tried to get, and succeeded to some degree, some cooperation from Mexico. But you know what they did? They didn't threaten Mexico. They bribed Mexico. They've been paying Mexico to limit the number of illegal aliens making it north to our border. And Trump is basically saying, no, look, we're not paying for this. You guys are going to fulfill your responsibilities, or we're going to hit you where it hurts. That's much more likely to work and much more responsible in the sense of more in the interest, because we're not paying them. We're getting them to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. The carrot versus the stick on this one.
Exactly.
Biden dangling the carrot and Trump wielding the stick by saying we're going to hurt you economically. I also, and I'm kind of extrapolating this out, Mark, to see if this makes sense to you. One of the things that that China and Mexico have been doing is preparing to, I guess, pose a serious threat to our automobile industry by building these massive BYD electric vehicle plants in China, in Canada, and then these Chinese electric vehicles will be sold into America, and they are really a cost cutter. They're reportedly to be in competition with like a Toyota Camry, a middle-of-the-road car, middle-range car, but at a cost of about $15,000. And if Donald Trump comes in and slaps a 25% tax on Mexico and an additional 10% tax on China, that's going to change that economic metric. and possibly force China out of the automobile business in Mexico, which has an ancillary benefit to the American automobile economy, which is in dire need of some help right now. So Trump might be playing a little 4D chess here, based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely possible. Now, I don't know which of these or what degree of tariffs the president might keep in place if Mexico, for instance, cooperates and cracks down on illegal immigration. In other words, it may be we'll knock the tariff down, whatever, or we'll keep it only on the cars but not on anything else. I mean, this is what negotiating trade deals is about. It's just that the thing that President Trump brings to it is that he's not just thinking about the dollars and cents in trade. He's saying these tariffs are a tool to improve national security, which is to say border security, as opposed to, pretty much all earlier administrations they have trade discussions. Obviously, it's something they do all the time. Everybody does, but they're only thinking about the dollars and cents of the imports and exports, not how to use the tariff threats to get other countries to do what we want them to do.
I see what you're saying, and it's excellent breakdown. We're talking with Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies, and I know that you've talked about this in the past, and it is the concept of self-deportation. And do you think that the new border czar, I like to call Tom Homan the new sheriff in town, he was down at the border today in Texas. Do you think Tom Homan's presence is going to trigger some of the self-deportation you have talked about?
Well, that's clearly part of what he intends. In other words, he's telling people that you have a chance now, what's left now, 9 weeks or 10 weeks or something.
55 days. 55 days.
You have a chance to get home on your own. In other words, because that would be better even for the illegal immigrants. You pack up your stuff, put your affairs in order. You may be going home for Christmas anyway. Lots of people, especially from Mexico and Central America, do that. So go home for Christmas and don't come back. In other words, you don't get arrested. It's more dignified for you. But the alternative is January 20th, the party is over, and you need to sort of put that into your calculations. Obviously, what they're trying to do is get some number of people to leave on their own. And I think it'll work. The question is, how many? Who knows? There's been some reporting out of Springfield, Ohio, the place where all the Haitians are in Ohio, where supposedly they were, eating the cats and dogs or whatever, that some people are already leaving. Now, some of them are going to sanctuary cities. In other words, they're going to like New York or whatever, where they figure they're safer. But apparently, and this is just reporting from, I think, The Guardian and also from CBS, that some people actually have left and gone to Canada already. So self-deportation can work. You just preferably need to make it, nationwide problem so that people won't be able to pick and choose which city or state they're in. The only realistic alternative will be to pack up and go home.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. But we do have a lot of sanctuary cities in many of these blue states around the country. And Denver has been in the spotlight of late. And obviously the East Coast, Boston, you're familiar with, and New York City. And if sanctuaries exist, it's going to be harder and harder for the deportations to go on. But I like the idea of self-deportations. It certainly takes the onus and expense off of us. Mark, I appreciate all of your time with us. Is there a place we should be following you? Is it Twitter X? Where is it?
Sure. Well, first of all, the center's website is cis.org, and we have new blog posts every day. All of our material is there. And for people who have a taste for snark and sarcasm, I am on Twitter, which is spelled X, but it's still pronounced Twitter as far as I can tell, at Mark S, as in Stephen, Mark S. Krikorian.
Mark S. Krikorian. And I have an addiction to snark, so I will be following you shortly, Mark. And apologies for mispronouncing. As a guy who gets his name mispronounced all the time, I'm embarrassed I said Krikorian and not Krikorian. I will.
My mother's mother used to do that all the time too. So you're in good company.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks
that.
a lot.
Mark, appreciate you. Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye now.
And there he goes. Mark Krikorian, Mark S. Krikorian. On Twitter, it's spelled X, but it's pronounced Twitter. I am stealing that as well. Thank you. Let's grab a quick call or two if we can before we go to break. Rick is in Manassas. Hello, Rick. Welcome to the program. Rick, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you beautifully. How are you, sir? What's up?
Okay, so I told Mr. Call Screener I was working in Beijing for the U.S. government in 2009, temporary assignment. Chinese built an automobile plant 1 mile from a Buick facility, and within a month they shut down the Buick facility, and they had Chinese cars that looked identical to the Buicks. And the second thing, and you can't trust these people. They copy everything, and it's not the Chinese people. I want to clarify. As a fellow snark aficionado, it's the People's Republic government. They are scumbags of the first order, and they steal everything.
Yeah, China has a reputation for going into the Buick factory, buying a car, and driving it down the street, and then copying every nut and bolt on it, and then building them. And they did that in the case of a Chevy, too. And they didn't call the car a Chevy. They called it a Cherry. So it's
got some other name. When I was there also, I'll tell you this, which is very scary, they bought a Brazilian Embraer regional jet, and they probably sent 200 people from the university in Shanghai to disassemble it, do the metallurgy. They copied it, but they couldn't make it fly because they did not understand the software. And that's a scary thought when you look at what they build.
Yeah, they're catching up, though, quickly. It is disturbing. But thank you, Rick. Thank you for that perspective on that. Appreciate you being there. I got time for one more here. One more. Let's get Barry in Frederick, Maryland on the phone. Hello, Barry. Welcome.
Hey, Mike. When are we going to realize that Mexico is not our ally? Mexico is aiding and abetting this criminal invasion that we're seeing. There's an article as far back as 2005 in the New York Times entitled A Mexican Manual for Illegal Immigrants. Mexico gives these people brochures and manuals on what to do, how to evade the Border Patrol, and then once they get here, it teaches them what organizations to seek out, what to say, what not to say. Mexico is not our ally. They are our enemy. They may be a trading partner, but they are not our ally. Allies are friends. They're not our friend.
You're right, Barry. And I think we have an outgoing president who doesn't understand that, but an incoming one who does. And I appreciate your clarity on it. It's 4:56. I can't believe the second hour is almost out of here. It's Mike Opelka in for Vince Coglianese on the Vince Coglianese Show here on WMAL. Historic day. But then again, it seems like every day is becoming a historic day. I want to get to some important things in the next hour. One of them is kind of ridiculous. It came out of Alec Baldwin's mouth. I know that shouldn't surprise anybody. The other one is the new border czar, Tom Homan, down at the border in Texas today and made some really interesting, very Tom Homan-like comments, and we'll have them for you, as well as if there are any updates on the reported ceasefire set to begin between Lebanon and Israel early tomorrow morning over there, which is almost there. It's almost midnight in Israel. And we'll see if there's any news out of Hamas. I also want to talk about CNN freaking out. And CNN and Brian Stelter. Remember him? He got fired from CNN, and I think they hired him back. And he seems to be on CNN more now than he was when he was on CNN full time. It's kind of weird, but he's freaking out. Why? Because Donald Trump has announced plans to announce podcasters to get press credentials for the White House. That's right, podcasters. Oh, it's going to be a fun 4 years. It's Opelka in for Coglianese on WMAL.